think you're all just coming in now. Can everyone hear me okay? So many thumbs up. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, welcome, girls, and thank you so much for making time to come tonight. I apologize. I actually dropped my laptop on the road and cracked it, which is perfect timing. So I think I freeze every now and then. So if you can't hear me or anything cuts out, just let me know, okay? Alrighty. So we might just wait one more minute because there was a couple of girls that messaged. Or just check. Has everyone had a wonderful day? Really good, huh? You're welcome to unmute yourself to talk, by the way. I just said that in the text in case we're in meditation. I think everyone is here. Perfect. Oh. All right, we might just start while we're waiting. I think there's a few more people just coming in now. If you know what cycle day you're on, do you want to pop it in the chat? No worries if you don't know, that's also fine. And did everyone bring a pen and a paper? Piece of paper, I should say, not a paper. Oh, 5. No. 25, 24. You guys are almost in sync. I'm actually period day 5 today too, Kelly. So we're in sync too. 103. Wow. And your period's coming in a day or two. That must be exciting. Long overdue, huh? Day 8. Day 8. So many cycle twins in here. 21. Geez, aren't you all good tracking your cycles? That's actually pretty rare that everyone knows what day they're on. Day 8. Day 20. Ooh, tomorrow. How are you feeling, Georgia? Are you feeling okay, or you're already starting to not feel great?
Sorry, I feel awful.
Oh no, you poor thing. Well, it sounds like we need to fix that, hey? 19. Funny that you all seem to like type at the same time when you're on the same days. Alrighty, we might get started. So thank you so much for everyone for coming. I really appreciate having you all here. It's nice that the word's getting out about periods and we can finally start having a normal cycle instead of just expecting that it's normal to suffer throughout. Well, most people I seem to speak to suffer for 2 weeks of their cycle, which is crazy when the cycle's only 4 weeks, right? So I thought I'd tell you to start off a little bit about me and how I got to where I am now. So for those of you who don't know, I'm a registered nurse, have been for 11 years, and started in pediatrics and have kind of moved into women's health from my own journey. So I was probably about 25. Oh, I'd say I probably went on the pill initially when I was about 18. I actually went on because I was having really, really heavy and painful bleeds. But the reason the doctor put me on it actually was because I had low iron from those really heavy bleeds. And from there, I had multiple issues with the pill. I tried like many different hormonal contraceptives and they all gave me really bad symptoms. The main one was like nausea and loss of libido, and a couple of other issues as well. And I tried multiple things. The last one I was on was the Implanon. And I found I had really bad mood swings from that. And I just got to a point where I was like, there's got to be another way, right? Like we can't all just suffer through this to try and manage something, or for contraception purposes, which I guess I was using it for both at that stage. So I went to my doctor and I was like, I've had enough, we're getting it out. I can remember laying there while she's taking the implant out and she's like, Steph, you're going to get pregnant straight away. Like, what are you doing? And I just felt so disheartened that that was our only option, you know, like she didn't care that I was suffering with these symptoms. She just was worried about pregnancy and that was it for her. And so then I started doing my own research. So I had been a registered nurse for probably, 4 years at this stage. And as I started learning about menstrual cycles, I actually came across the fertility awareness method. Has anyone here heard of the fertility awareness method? Yeah, a couple of you, not many though. So the fertility awareness method, pretty much when I first found it, is what I used for contraception. Sorry, I'm just letting a few more girls in. Is what I initially used for contraception purposes. So when I came across it, I started reading about this, and how it works is you track your temperature and your cervical mucus, and it will tell you exactly when your fertile window is. It tells you when you ovulate. It tells you a lot about your hormones too, which is why I love it so much now. So it will tell you when your hormones are rising and falling, and you can, I guess, predict in a very small window as an estimate as to when you're ovulating. So I started reading about this, and they started talking about cervical mucus, and this is something I always see in my clients too, which I get really excited about. But I remember reading about this and realizing I'd never really noticed it in myself. Like I kind of had noticed shifts in my cervical mucus, but once I learned about this and how different it changes throughout your cycle, I was like, oh my gosh, how have we never ever been taught this? And then the temperature as well. So your temperature will change throughout your cycle. And that's because of ovulation. You produce a hormone called progesterone, and progesterone actually raises our core body temperature. So these are all the things I started reading about. And then I literally became obsessed. And my sister's on this call. She knows what I'm like. I'm literally like, I have a pile this big of library books all about periods right now. It's literally all I read about. And it's been many 7 years of learning and reading and doing further training, and I just can't get enough of it because it just blows my mind that none of us were taught about this. So that's my story initially, and then from there, once I worked out contraception, I then came off the Implanon, and then all of my initial period symptoms came back. So then it was like a whole new set of problems, and I was like, okay, cool, let's sort this out. And as I'm sure many of you would also be aware, what it's like when you go to the GP and you tell them about your symptoms, and they're like, oh, well, that's just being a woman. Good luck, you know, or here's the pill. And, you know, if you've just come off the pill, that's not really the answer you're looking for. So yeah, from there, I then went down many paths, tried, you know, naturopaths, all of the natural side, as well as the Western side as well, being a registered nurse. And that's when I found multiple things that kind of all led together to then healing my own hormones, and then when I did further training as well so that I can help other women. And I guess the calling never really left, because everywhere I go, I just hear people talking about their periods and how bad it is. I'm like, oh my gosh, we need to fix you all. So yeah, that's my story. And that's how I got here. But what I wanted to start with, just to get us into the mood, does anyone have any questions before we officially start? No? Okay, wonderful. I thought we would do just a bit of like a womb-centered meditation just to bring us into this space. I apologize because my computer is loving me at the moment. I did have music in the background, but it's too slow for it. So we're just gonna listen to my beautiful voice. So when you're ready, if you just want to settle in, and we'll do a bit of a meditation. Alrighty. Close your eyes and fully arrive in this space. Place one hand on your heart, the other on your womb. Feel the warmth of your own touch connecting these two centers, love and wisdom. Begin to breathe slowly. Inhale through your nose. Exhale through your mouth. With each breath, let yourself soften and drop deeper into your body. Let your awareness travel down through your chest, into your belly, all the way to your pelvis. Imagine your breath flowing there like gentle waves. Every inhale fills this space with nourishment. Every exhale releases what you no longer need. If it feels good, invite small movements into your hips. Tiny circles or a soft sway side to side. There's no right or wrong here, just loosening, softening, letting this part of you breathe. Now imagine a soft golden light glowing inside your womb space. Warm and steady. With each breath, see it expand, filling your belly, your chest, your whole body with gentle radiance. This light is your inner rhythm, the cycle within you. Just like the seasons, this light shifts in intensity. At times, it is bright and outward, full of energy, like the summer of ovulation. At other times, it softens and turns inward, like the winter of menstruation. It rises and falls, waxes and wanes, but it never disappears. Your body is not broken, it's cyclical, and that is its wisdom. Bring awareness back to your hands, heart, and womb, compassion and intuition. Feel them connected. Whisper quietly to yourself, I trust my rhythm, I honor my cycle, I carry my wisdom within. Take one more deep breath when you're ready. And open your eyes. No one fell asleep? Alrighty, I am going to get up my PowerPoint. Alrighty, did that come up okay on your end? Yeah. All right, so firstly, oh, Georgia, did you have a question?
No, that was an accident.
Oh, good. Okay. So firstly, before we get into things, I just want to let you know that everything in this space is confidential. So just listen with love and speak from your heart. And I am grateful for all of your input as we go. All right. Now, what I wanted to do first is just have a chat about the luteal phase. Does everyone know when the luteal phase is? Is there anyone that doesn't know and wants me to explain? No? Right. So the luteal phase seems to be when we all suffer the most, right? So the luteal phase is that phase after ovulation until we get our period. So usually how I run this in person is I get everyone to partner up, but of course it's a bit tricky when we're all on the computer and most of us don't know each other. So if you feel comfortable, up to you. If you just want to write in your journal how you feel in your luteal phase, or if you want to pop in the chat just how it makes you feel. I find it's really nice to hear other people's stories about how they feel, because it's not really something we ever talk about. Yes, I guess we definitely speak about it with our closest friends, but most of the time I feel like most people say we never speak about it. So if you feel confident in letting me know or letting us know what you think about your luteal phase, if you like it or if you hate it, you know, whatever you want to bring up about it. So I'll tell you a little bit about me. So my luteal phase is really, really good now. Yeah, we've got a few coming in. I'll just quickly tell you about mine, then I'll read them out. So I used to get really, really, really sore breasts. That was one thing I remember that would drive me crazy. I can remember like being in the shower and even the shower water hitting them, I'd be like, that's so bad. But I haven't had that in a long time. I used to get really irritable and cranky, which I can see many of you are putting that in. Yeah, and just quiet down. But I think we've all been taught that that's quite normal. And I think maybe that comes down to the fact that a lot of us experience that, right? But it actually isn't normal. And so that's the message I really want to get out the most, that it isn't normal. And if anyone's telling you that, please find someone else to speak to. But yeah, let's read out some of these things that we're getting here. So moody, sad and cranky, irritable, don't feel like me, no motivation, anxious and out of control. Learning to embrace it, that's nice. Slowing down and turning in, painful breaths, yes, I know that feeling. Exhausted, low energy, muscle weakness, irritable, hungry, sore breasts, severe brain fog, very exhausted, energy drops, little social capacity, very short fuse and bloating, yep. Super irritable, angry, emotional. Irritable, emotional, sensitive to the point of crying, lower back pain, depressed and couldn't stop crying, and irritable. Okay. Yeah, very common themes there, hey? And we'll get into that when I explain each phase of the cycle, but I think it's just really valuable to see that you're not alone in that, and it does really, really suck. But there are many things that can be done to help all of that. Everything I'm reading there, I'm like, let's fix it all. So yeah, let's get into some more education. Did anyone have any questions or want to speak? You're welcome to unmute yourself if there's anything you want to add to that. No one? Don't be shy. Don't bite, I swear. Okay. All right, if no one else has anything else, I will go to the next slide. All right, so this is the fun part, and it can seem really overwhelming. Can everyone still see my slide and hear me okay? Yes, thumbs up, cool. All righty. So when I first teach this to people, and when I first learned this, actually, when I learned this in my fertility awareness training, I found it very overwhelming. So if you find it overwhelming, that's completely normal. Once you've been through it a few times, it makes complete sense and your whole world will change. But if you have any questions as I go, just pop them in the chat box and I'll just pause every now and then and go through them, okay? So this is what we would call our menstrual cycle. So you can see here, before I should get into this, this is a normal menstrual cycle. So I understand many of us have completely varying lengths of cycles, and some of them will be what we would say is normal and some of them not so much. So if yours doesn't look like this example, don't freak out. It's just the general example that we use, okay? So you can see here, I'll explain what's going on. So this is like what kind of fluids you would see, for example. And this is the egg. Well, it's a bit more complex than this, but this is how we would explain it to begin with. So this is the egg growing, right? So we see here this person had a menstrual cycle here for 5 days. And then the grey is what we would call dry days. So when they went into the toilet and they wiped, they wouldn't see any mucus at all. And then here we have some light blue and then dark blue. That pretty much is just different categories of cervical mucus. So what happens as you get closer to ovulation, your cervical mucus changes, and that's to do with the changing in hormones that we see. And then you can see here, she's then gone to some more dry days again before she's then got her period again. So that relates to the egg, as in you can see that it's growing, 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 growing. And it gets to a certain point where it's ready to be released. And from there, it then gets released from that outer casing. And this is the outer casing here that's actually shriveling up. And that plays a huge role in our hormones. It actually releases a different hormone called progesterone. Does that make sense? Does anyone have any questions about that? Right. So then we have, so I'm going to break it down into phases just so it's easy for you guys to see. So if we go back to the start, we have the red lines here. So that's when we're bleeding. So that's the first few days. And so that's what we would call our inner winter, okay? So we all know that very well. It's actually what we would call the rest, release, and clarity phase. And this is when our hormones are balanced, okay? So in this phase, what we see is our hormones. We're going to talk about 2 main hormones, so estrogen and progesterone. So our hormones are at their lowest here. So this is estrogen, right? So it's quite low. And then we also have progesterone, which is also very low. So estrogen, I like to explain estrogen as the lion. So it's super, super happy and very excitable. And then we have progesterone. And progesterone is nature's antidepressant. So I call progesterone the lion tamer, and then we have estrogen, which is the lion. And if you think about it, we need both of them. They're both just as important. They have 2 very different roles, but they have to work together. If we have no lion tamer, if we just have a lion tamer, the show's pretty boring, right? But if we just have the lion, we're in some serious trouble. Things are going to get pretty wild. So we need them both to kind of balance each other out. And so that's why we have all of these PMS symptoms. It generally comes down to the balance between the 2. So we'll go through what happens. So yeah, in winter, your energy feels low, generally both physically and emotionally, and you may feel more inward and reflective and crave solitude. So this is generally what we should expect then. If you're having feelings of like feeling really quite depressed and hating on yourself, that could potentially be related to a hormone imbalance and something we want to look at there. It should just be a feeling of wanting to go more inward. And then from there, it turns into spring. So that's what we call the follicular phase. So you can see here that that egg is starting to grow and our period has stopped. And then we'll have some dry days. And that is spring. And so what's happening there is we have estrogen that really starts to rise. So everyone loves the follicular phase, right? It's that phase where you're really starting to get back into the swing of things. You feel your energy rising, you're starting to get more happy. I don't think I've ever heard anyone complain about their follicular phase. So something's going right there. But yeah, so how that works is estrogen works on our happy hormones, and that's why we're feeling more motivated and more energetic. It will eventually have a rise in testosterone as well that helps with that drive at that time of the cycle. It also helps with confidence and creativity. So I love the follicular and I guess ovulatory phase. They're very similar because it is estrogen that's the higher one, so the lion phase. And why I like it so much is because you can communicate really well. So I'm in my menstrual phase, which is a horrible time to do a presentation, but you know, life doesn't always let you get to choose that. But I always find when I'm in my follicular and ovulatory phase, I can communicate really, really well. So I used to have this job where I had to call all of my patients and check in on them. And I always had this initial line that I would say at the start. And every time I was in my follicular or ovulatory phase, I could get it out perfectly. And then every time I was in my menstrual or luteal phase, I just would always stuff it up every time. And then all of this was while I was studying to be a menstrual cycle educator. And I finally realized there was a pattern there. And I was like, wow, I can't believe that's crazy. But then the more I started speaking to people about it, I realized they have noticed it too, where they can just speak so well in their follicular and ovulatory phases. So if you ever need to do a presentation, this is when you want to do it. So the follicular phase is that time right up until you're ovulating. So that egg is growing, and it's getting to a certain point. Our progesterone still stays fairly low during this time. And the reason why that works well is because estrogen's still only getting to a certain point. So it's still in balance with progesterone. Anyone have any questions so far? No? Great. All right, and then we have the ovulatory phase. So this is mostly everyone's favorite phase. Other than a few people, I find if you suffer from PMDD, some people will find that quite a tricky phase just because there's such a big jump in hormones that it can really affect the brain and those happy hormones. So this is where we find our estrogen is the highest. And the reason for that is the outer casing of the egg, it releases estrogen. So that's why it's increasing as the egg is growing. And this is the time we'll also really see a lot of cervical mucus too. So we'll likely see like clear, stretchy cervical mucus. Some of you might have seen that before. Some people call it raw egg whites. And then progesterone also actually starts to rise in this phase too. So most people think that progesterone doesn't rise until after you've ovulated, but it actually starts like just a little bit before you've ovulated, because that outer casing will start cracking open, and that's actually what releases the progesterone. So summer is when we have a huge surge of energy and vitality. They call it the connection, expression, and vitality phase. And our testosterone also rises slightly in this phase as well, which makes us super confident and gives us more of a drive. And then we have the luteal phase, our favorite phase. So the other thing as well, so a lot of you would have heard about the different phases, but generally they give you like certain days, like they may say from day 1 to 7 you're in this phase, from 7 to whatever you're in the next phase. But actually it's very, very individual for each person, which is why I rave on about fertility awareness so much and why I think everyone should learn it. Because unless you really know exactly when you're ovulating, there's no real way you can tell what phase you're in, other than picking up on certain signs. But it just really, you know, changes how you see your cycles when you know exactly where you are in each phase. So the luteal phase, you can see here, the cool thing about the luteal phase is it's always approximately 10 to 14 days. And so if you can identify when you're ovulating, you will always be able to work out pretty much exactly when your period is coming, about it usually 1 day or 2 off. And that's because this phase will always stay the same length. So a lot of people think that if your period is late, that you can just be staying in this phase for longer. That's not true, and that's not how it works. It's actually your follicular phase that you stay in for much longer, because it's your body trying to ovulate and it's having difficulties. And then once it ovulates, you just stay in this phase for the rest of the time. So the luteal phase, what's happening here? So we can see the egg has been released out into the fallopian tubes. And then we have this outer casing of the egg. And so what that is called, it's called the corpus luteum. And what we'll do, it actually shrivels up. And the shriveling up will then release the hormone called progesterone. So we'll see here that estrogen starts to decline. And then we have progesterone, which really rises really high. So the issue here that we find with most people is this actually isn't what a lot of us are seeing. So most people who are having those PMS kind of symptoms, they're having issues with their progesterone and estrogen ratios. And it comes down to ratios, right? It's not, so that's the other thing when it comes to getting a blood test, for example, is we need to look at those ratios. So it's all about the balance between the two, the lion and the lion tamer. So if you have a really small lion tamer and a huge lion, it's going to be out of control. So it's all about the balance between the two. So here we should have estrogen lower than progesterone, but a lot of the times it's actually that progesterone either isn't high enough or our estrogen is too high. So when they're normal, for example, like this, we should be feeling more inward, but we should still be feeling positive, right? I find for me, it's a really intuitive phase. I'll be able to assess my life and be like, is that really, you know, increasing the value in my life, or is it something that I need to let go of? Versus someone who has a hormonal imbalance might get to this phase and be like, I hate everything in my life, I'm just letting it all go, you know, that kind of thing, or having meltdowns over everything and then getting to the next phase and being like, oh, it wasn't that bad. So it shouldn't be like that at all. It should just be a matter of really being able to reflect and probably not want to socialize as much as usual, but in no way should it be having those negative thoughts, looking in the mirror and hating yourself, those kind of things. If you're having that and noticing it in your luteal phase, then that's definitely a hormone imbalance that we need to look at. And there's plenty of things we can do about that. But yeah, in general, that's the cycle we would see. And then what happens here at the end of the luteal phase, your hormones drop. And then that's what causes us to get our period. So estrogen actually increases our uterine lining, and then progesterone maintains it there for those 2 weeks. And then when our hormones drop, that all falls away. And that's literally what our period is. So that's how we can use our hormones and our period heaviness to tell us what's going on with our hormones. Because, for example, if we're having a really heavy period, that will tell us what our estrogen levels are doing. Things like spotting and that kind of thing can often relate to our progesterone levels. So that's how I assess using this method to work out what's going on with our hormones, because you can see here, it's very clear that certain hormones will cause different things to happen throughout our cycle. So, anyone have any questions?
Emma put a question in the chat box.
Great.
I'm just trying to work out how to unmute myself. Sorry. I was just wondering if there's a specific test that you need to ask your doctor for. Like, is there a specific name for the test to work out how your levels currently are?
Yeah, so you can just ask your doctor for a general hormone blood test. The thing I find, which is why I teach this method, which I'll show you in a second what it looks like, but the reason why I teach this, so what we do to find out this information here on the screen is we document like our cervical mucus and our temperatures, and that will actually show us this pattern. And the reason why I find that better than a blood test is because when we're testing our blood, right, so generally they like you to do it on day 21. Most of us aren't ovulating on day 14. So it's based off, sorry, I'm just letting someone in. So that the blood test is based off hoping that we ovulated on day 14. But for a lot of us, we're not ovulating on day 14. It could be any time, especially if we're having irregular cycles. It could be anywhere in that. Generally, it's 2 weeks before your period. But you're not going to know when that 2 weeks before your period is until you get your period, right? If that makes any sense. Kind of. So that's why I find charting way more helpful than a blood test, just because you get data every single day, right? So you get your period and then you'll have some dry days and then your cervical mucus will change, and that tells us what your estrogen levels are doing. And why we want to know that is because our estrogen levels have to get to a certain point before we can ovulate. So they will get to, the cervical mucus will change and should stay there for a few days, and we know, oh, we're likely going to ovulate. What can happen from there is you might not, your body might be too stressed, and then it can try again. So that's why we also use temperature, because our temperature is what tells us what our progesterone levels are doing. So if our temperature is higher, we know progesterone is in play. And progesterone will only come up once we've ovulated. So then using the cervical mucus and the temperature, we can work out when ovulation is. And then that's also beneficial if you want to go and get a blood test, because you'll know exactly when to get the blood test based on that. But we can also tell a lot of those things from just charting as well. So I actually feel like you get more info from learning how to chart versus blood tests. Blood tests are definitely still helpful. But the other thing with blood tests as well is hormones can actually live in our tissues as well. So it's not an exact picture of exactly what's going on with our hormones. So it can be a bit wishy-washy at times. So it's definitely great to have. And yeah, the answer to your question would be you just literally ask for a hormone panel from your GP. Some GPs won't do it. It just depends on their expertise and if they feel confident in reading it. I've had a few girls who have got it done, but then didn't have anyone to read the test. So then it was a bit invalid. But yeah, you can definitely just ask them and they'll just run your general hormone panel for you.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Anyone else have any questions? All right, we'll keep going. But if you have any, just pop them in the chat or put your hand up or unmute yourself, whatever you feel like. Okay. So what I wanted to do briefly is if you could just take a moment, now that you've kind of learnt a bit about how your hormones and moods change throughout the cycle, I think it's really important that we, who here is in their luteal phase at the moment? We had a fair few of you, didn't we? Let me just go back to that chat. I think it was Safi's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
I'm as well, but I don't know where the chat is.
Okay, so for you luteal phase girlies, I would like you, so what we're going to do, if you have a paper and pen or if you just have your phone, that's fine too. But what I love doing is writing a letter to yourself to help you through your luteal phase. So if you're in your luteal phase, I'd say majority of you aren't feeling that nice towards yourself at the moment. So instead of coming from you, I want you to pretend you're your best friend and what you would tell yourself if you knew the hard things you were going through right now with those hormones at play. And if you're in your ovulatory or follicular phase, now is the perfect time to be writing you a nice letter of what you would want to hear in your luteal phase. If you all just want to take a couple of minutes to write a couple of things down, don't worry, we won't have to share them with each other. It's just a personal thing for you. And go for it. Right, I'll just give you another 30 seconds to finish up writing if you're still going. Alrighty. Everyone write something really nice to themselves. Now you need to go into your diaries and mark the first day you think you're going to be on your luteal phase, so you can put that letter somewhere and get it out then, so you have it with you. Right, I'm going to go back to this because I feel like we should have some more questions. I know it's a bit weird on computer when you can't all see each other, but if you have any questions, now is your time, because I know this is very complicated. I'm going to leave it here so you can have a little look again. Just put it in the chat if you don't want to chat, or you can also chat too.
Hi, I just wanted to ask, how long is the luteal phase? Because I only feel bad or like anxious the week right before my period, but it looks longer in the chart.
Yeah, so the luteal phase, that's a great question. So the luteal phase is generally, we want it at least at the minimum 10 days. And the reason why we want it minimum 10 days is because we need it to be long enough to maintain the pregnancy pretty much. So HCG, one of our hormones, will take over. And so the corpus luteum needs the last 10 days maintaining that progesterone production. So minimum 10 days, generally we want it around 10 to 14 days. If it's 18 days, generally you're pregnant. So yeah, around 10 to 14 days on average is what we would want our luteal phase. So the reason why you're finding that you only feel bad in that last half. So how many days did you say?
So it's usually like 5 days before I'm like, oh, I'm getting my period soon.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can see here, can you guys see my marker on the computer? Can you see that? Oh, maybe you
No.
can't. Okay, well that doesn't help. So if you go, so yeah, for example, if you go to the last 5 days, so if you count the squares back at the bottom and then go up, you can see that the hormones are kind of at their peak there, and then they really start to drop. Can you see that?
Yeah.
So both estrogen, hold on. Oh yeah, so both progesterone and, so progesterone is the top one, the gray one, and then estrogen is that bottom one. So you can see there, they're both quite high, and then all of a sudden they start to drop on those 5 days. So that's why you're not feeling great. And generally, like, it's definitely individual per person, but generally it just comes down to the balance in between those hormones and how quick that drop is. And sometimes we find that's because estrogen can be too high and progesterone isn't maintaining it enough, and then it has a quicker drop. But yeah, it's something we have to look into and assess each person. It can be for different reasons, but that's definitely why you would find it's just half of that luteal phase, because that's when your hormones are dropping. And so your brain's going, whoa, like, what's happening? Where's all my happy hormones going? And then, yeah, it'll continue to decrease. And it really comes down to the balance between the two as they're falling down that causes those issues. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
Hey, you're welcome. Does anyone else have any questions? Shamika, how does the cycle generally work with somebody with PCOS? What differences? I heard sometimes we don't ovulate. Yeah, so what happens with PCOS is your body has difficulty with ovulating. You're right there. So if we look at this example, I'm sorry, I wish my pointer was working. I thought it was. So if you see at the start where you have your bleed, So generally, normal people with PCOS will have a normal bleed. And then what will happen is they have a really long follicular phase. So see here where there's like the light blue and the dark blue. So that's our cervical mucus. So generally we find people with PCOS have a lot of cervical mucus for a long time. And the reason for that is what's happening is you've got multiple little follicles all trying to grow, and they're getting to a certain point. And because your body is under so much stress, depending on what type of PCOS you have, what will happen is your body won't ovulate. It tries to, and then it doesn't. And then what happens is you might find you have a couple of days where you dry up again, and then you'll have a big patch of cervical mucus again. So what's happening with PCOS is your body is trying to ovulate multiple times, and it's just not getting there. And then so what can either happen is your body does ovulate or it doesn't. And so if it does ovulate, sometimes it's taken a few times the estrogen has risen. So it will be that follicular phase kind of pattern in your hormones kind of repeats a few times. And then it's just not being able to get to that luteal phase. It's getting stuck. They just can't release the egg. And so what can happen is your body either goes, wow, like we've got such a buildup of our endometrial lining from all of that estrogen that it's now too thick. We just need to shed it away and start again. And sometimes you'll just get a period, but it's not actually a true period. It's just like a withdrawal kind of bleed, if that makes sense. And then sometimes you might ovulate. And so what will happen is your body might try a few times and then it finally ovulates, and then you'll have that luteal phase, which is about 10 to 14 days, and then you'll get your period. Does that make sense? Let me just double check I answered that. Sometimes I go off on random tangents. Yeah, does that make sense, Shamika? Feel free to unmute yourself or ask another question if I haven't answered something for you there.
No, that makes sense. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Alrighty, Carla. Oh, is that the next one? Olivia. Hold on. Can you explain again why the luteal phase isn't extended when our period is late? Yeah, of course I can. So the luteal phase always stays, what did I say, 10 to 14 days long. That's, that's a healthy luteal phase. There are people that have shorter luteal phases, and I have quite a few clients that do at the moment. And so we're working on boosting their progesterone production because something's going on that's causing them to have a short luteal phase, and we don't want a short luteal phase because we need it to be at least 10 days to maintain a pregnancy for if we want to get pregnant in the future. So why it can't be extended is just because that's the length that I'm sorry, I keep using my pointer and then realize you can't actually see what I'm pointing at. So let me explain this properly. So if you look in the middle of the graph where the egg or the follicle is, that middle one with the blue outer casing, so that's cracking open and releasing, the follicle is cracking open and releasing the egg. And that outer casing, that's called the corpus luteum. And what that does is it actually produces progesterone for 10 to 14 days until our body or the embryo actually takes over in producing progesterone itself. So that's why it will only last that same amount of time each time, just because it can't last forever, right? It's just the follicle that's producing progesterone for so long, and then it's pretty much dead and gone by the end of those 2 weeks. And so unless the embryo hasn't taken over, so unless you're pregnant, which would then take over producing the progesterone, your period will then come. Does that make sense, Olivia? Yeah, great. All right, what would be a cause of a mid-cycle spot? Generally, Carla, were you oh no, you didn't have PCOS. So generally, mid-cycle spotting comes down to a high level of estrogen. I often frequently see it with clients that have PCOS. I'm not sure if you have that. It definitely doesn't mean that's what you have. But it's generally because of a really sudden rise in estrogen that then causes the spotting. It's just like a change. So when it comes to spotting, pretty much what happens with the spotting is it's a breakaway of the uterine lining, And the reason why that happens is because there's a sudden change in hormones. So progesterone is actually what maintains the lining. If that falls away, especially towards getting your period, that often means that our progesterone levels aren't high enough to maintain the estrogen. But we do often see it around ovulation, and it's generally nothing to be concerned about. It's just from a really sudden shift in those hormones, and then a little bit falls away, if that makes sense. Carla, did you have any other questions about that before I move on to the next one? Okay, yeah. Yeah, so if you have endo, generally we find that endo girls have much higher levels of estrogen, and that comes down to multiple factors. Generally, you will have poor liver and gut function, which can then recirculate the estrogen levels, causing higher, but also the endometrial tissue also increases estrogen. So it's just like a double whammy of estrogen from everywhere. But yeah, it is something that we will often see around ovulation, that spotting. Okay, where are we? What are the most common causes or contributors of hormone imbalances? Oh, where to start? I think most women unfortunately have hormone imbalances these days, and it comes down to many things. I think the biggest thing is really the lifestyle we live now, right? Like we are just go, 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 living in a man's world, no time to rest. We don't get to do our presentations when we're ovulating. We have to do them when we have our period, because that's just life, you know? A lot of the time I find most of my girls aren't eating frequently enough to hit their blood sugars balanced. They're not having enough protein. A lot of them aren't even having enough carbs. It's just learning about balancing your blood sugar and keeping it maintained well enough. Then we have to look as well at all of the pesticides, all of the estrogens in all of our beauty products as well, in the air, in the pollution. That's all then causing an increase in estrogen. A lot of us have a lot of gut issues going on as well. And I was just mentioning that before. I often find a lot of people struggle with their detoxing pathways. And so what's happening is they're recirculating that estrogen back into their bloodstream. So it's sitting in the bowel for too long and then getting reabsorbed back into the bloodstream. So then our levels are much higher. Even things just like not getting enough sleep. When I first did my own hormone healing, that was a huge part in mine, which is crazy. I was like, yeah, I sleep fine. But actually, when I started recording my sleep, I had mild sleep apnea. So I felt like I was sleeping, like I was getting like 8 hours sleep, but I wasn't actually sleeping the whole night. I was constantly waking up, not being able to breathe. So there's many, many reasons. Generally, they're the main ones I find. When you start working on that, you see really big changes. And really, a lot of the time, it just comes down to understanding what's actually going on with your hormones and working out what you need to be doing to support your own body. We can't get rid of stress, right? That's just like, it's a normal part of life. We all can't go to a farm with our goats and have a lovely time just laying around doing nothing. We have to earn money, and we generally need to stay in the cities because that's where our friends and our family are and all of those things that are important for us. So it's not about taking away stress. I remember one time a naturopath told me, well, you just have to stress less, and I just started crying because I was like, that's literally not possible. I'm already doing all the things. I'm meditating, I'm taking out what I can. But for me, it was learning how to support my body, give myself extra minerals, support my gut health, support my liver health, make sure my blood sugar was balanced, which was a huge one for me. I always thought I was eating the right foods and enough. But I think when you go down the health rabbit hole, you can go a little bit too far and you end up eating all of those healthy things that aren't always giving you the energy your body needs to survive in this world. So looking at all of those things is where you would go to try and work out exactly what's causing your hormone imbalance, I guess. Sorry, Alicia, I know I kind of went off on a tangent there. Let me know if you have any other questions about that. Generally, yeah, it's very different for each person, but I find if you hit those main factors, we all love to skip over that, right? We all just want to be like, give me the magic supplement that will make me feel better. But I find that's where the key is looking at all of those things. And generally most people's hormone imbalances can definitely balance to some extent. Of course, if you have things like endo, for example, it's never going to get complete. It's never going to be completely gone, but absolutely we can get rid of that pain and that kind of thing. I just had a girl in my last program who was vomiting and awake all night in her cycle. And for the last 4 cycles, she hasn't had any of that. So good. So don't give up if you're one of those people. There's definitely hope out there. Stef, do people with longer than normal cycles potentially have multiple attempts at ovulating in this time? Yes, so that's exactly what's happening. So if your cycle is longer than, for example, 30, I find it even like around 32 days and on, generally that's because what's happened is your body has tried to ovulate and then it's had a little break and then it's tried again. So with that, that's why I find fertility awareness is so important for people with longer cycles, because you can really work out exactly what's going on, and you'll see that cervical mucus change a few times. And if you're using temperatures as well, you'll then be able to confirm when you've ovulated and be like, oh, okay, so I tried to ovulate here and I didn't, and then I tried again and we can see that I definitely did because I had a temp rise. I actually had a client I was on a call with yesterday who had this exact thing, and then we went back for the first time she tried to ovulate, and she had been at a wedding and she was drinking a lot and had hardly any sleep. So her body was like, oh, hell no, we're not bringing a baby into this world. We're not going to ovulate now. So it held off. And then she ovulated again, or she tried to ovulate again a few days later, and she successfully ovulated. And we could tell that because of her temperature shift. And so she actually had a longer cycle than she usually does. But it was really cool when we were like, what happened on those days? Why did your body try and fail? And that was, yeah, she looked in the calendar. She's like, oh, is that a wedding? So, yeah. Does that answer your question, Safa? All right. If we have a really bad luteal phase, is it safe to assume we have a potential hormone imbalance? Yeah, I would say so. Unless, of course, there's part of the hormones that come up that will bring up things that maybe you do need to look at. But if you're finding like you're having really bad like bloating and breast pain, they're really, really good indicators that you've got a bit of a hormonal imbalance. If you're being really, really, really negative towards yourself and you're not usually, that's a really good sign too. Your luteal phase should more just be like as if you were your best friend and you were like, hey, let's say, for example, you have this boyfriend that's been really dodgy, not treating you well. In your luteal phase, you're like, I shouldn't be accepting that, and I usually do. That's like a healthy luteal phase versus having a really, really, really nice boyfriend and then it gets to your luteal phase and you're like, I cannot stand his breathing. You know, that's a hormonal imbalance kind of thing. Carla, oh, you're never diagnosed. Yeah. Thanks, Bisha. Oh, no, you're right, Stef. Okay, any other questions? Right, so what I did quickly want to just tell you girls about, if it's something you're interested in. So this is my my 6-week program that I run if you are having hormone issues and wanting next steps of how you can work with me. So it's a 6-week hormone reset challenge, and in it I teach you the fertility awareness method, which is what I bang on about 24/7 that I love. So you get like a goodie bag that will come with a thermometer and instructions and a heap of other cool things. I've had quite a few really cool holistic product brands give me some cool items for you all. So within it, you'll learn the fertility awareness method. You have a one-on-one call with me initially. So we make you like what I would call a treatment plan. I'm not a doctor, so I'm not prescribing, but it's something that you can work on for those 6 weeks to get your hormones back in balance. We'll also then teach you how to use the fertility awareness method so we can assess what's going on with your hormones. We'll also have group coaching sessions once a week, and you have messaging with me Monday to Friday for the 6 weeks as well. Within that, the goal is that you walk away with your first cycle that's really decreased in all of those symptoms. Generally, most of my girls have gotten rid of their symptoms at the 3-month mark, but definitely have an improvement in the first cycle that we do together. And it's for anyone with any kind of hormone symptoms. So in the last round, we had quite a few girls with PMDD, really bad PMS symptoms. So crying lots, getting really, really depressed in their luteal phase. They had amazing outcomes. All of them have had no crying, didn't even realize that their periods were coming other than charting. So that was a huge win. We had, a girl with severe period pain who stopped vomiting. Her pain has decreased heaps. I also think she had PMDD. She was very depressed in her luteal phase, but never realized that was not a normal thing. So she's gotten rid of that too. And she's like, wow, I can't believe my life now that I'm not upset for half of my cycle. We had another girl who had quite a bit of acne who's cleared that as well. And we had quite a few girls with irregular cycles too who have been able to learn when they're ovulating in their cycle and work out what was going on. We had 2 girls that had really short cycles, and so we learned from both of them that they were actually ovulating too early. So there can be 2 reasons why you have short cycles, either that you're ovulating too early or your luteal phase, that end phase, is too short, which would tell us our progesterone is too low. So that's been really good for them to find out too, because they're both in their later 30s. And so if it's something that they may potentially be wanting kids in the future, that they would want to investigate further. And then we've also been working on their health as well to see if we can improve that. One girl did have actually her last cycle was back to 30 days. So she was really excited about that. She'd been having 24-day cycles for quite some time. So we'll see how that keeps progressing. But that's just a few examples of the kind of girls we had in the last round and the outcomes they had. So I am obsessed with this program and put my heart and soul into it after many, many, many years of study that continues. But if you do feel like you're wanting extra help, we start next Monday. And because you've all joined me today, I did want to offer you a discount. So it's currently $370 for the 6 weeks. But if you join within the next 48 hours, I've got it down to $330 for you. There is also the weekly payment plan too. So it's very affordable. And you can get, if you want to get the discount, you just need to type in www.flowandbloom.com/knowyourflowwithin. But I'll send it to you via email after as well. I put a QR code there, but then realized everyone's probably on their phone, so you're not going to be able to scan that. But if you're on your phone, go ahead and scan. Does anyone have any questions about the program? Carla, I will answer your question for you. You possibly cover this. I tend to lack focus other than the obvious lifestyle choice. What things we do to ensure we balance our hormones, as in what can we consume or do to support this? What, Carla, when are you finding that you lack focus? Is it a certain time of your cycle? H said, I was in the last round, and as I mentioned earlier, had severe PMDD for nearly 10 years, crying and super depressed for 2 weeks, every cycle, and fatigue that had always affected me from working a full-time job, attending social events, etc. Since Stef's program, I haven't had a single tear, which is huge, and have seen such an increase in energy. My life is so much better since joining. So I highly recommend if you're struggling with your hormones. Smiley face. Thank you, Rach. You have ADHD, worse than luteal phase, yeah. Like I'm scared even more. Yeah, actually, that's really interesting. There's a heap of research coming out lately, which I've been meaning to read once I'm done with my million books. There's a heap of research around people having way worse PMS if they have ADHD. I'm not 100% certain. I have started reading a bit of it, but it's not at the top of my head right now, but I do assume it comes from having, unfortunately, that dysregulated nervous system with both of those things going on, and how your brain would react to the hormone changes when you already have ADHD. But generally, where to start with supporting your body, you want to be adding in, the first thing I would say was adding in your minerals, really looking at where you're getting your minerals from. That really helps with your nervous system. There's heaps of different herbs and herbal teas, which I'm obsessed with, that you can add in to help support that nervous system. Then I would definitely recommend that you start learning the fertility awareness method, just to try and work out what's going on with your hormones, because that way you can see what the actual problem is. And from there, get more of a specialized insight into what you need to be supporting. We're all quite different when it comes to that luteal phase as to what's causing the issue for us. So yeah, if you can work on trying to pinpoint what's happening with your hormones throughout the cycle, then definitely that's where I would suggest to start. And then from there, it's whether you need to be supporting your liver or whether you need more support with that egg formation to then have better progesterone production. Blood sugar absolutely is a huge thing as well, especially if you're having those mood changes and fogginess in the luteal phase. But yeah, there's multiple things, but yeah, it is quite, although it's generalized, it's also very specialized per person when you start getting into having a look at their charts and working out what's happening with their individual hormones, if that makes sense. Thanks, Tanny. Thanks for coming. All right. You're welcome, Carla. Anyone else have any other questions before I let you go? Oh, what I did want to show you actually. So I just popped these 2 slides into the end. They're from another training, but so you can see here, this is what your temperatures will like when you chart. Sorry, I've got a weird screen up. When you chart your temperatures for fertility awareness, so you can see, can everyone see my cursor now? Yay! All right. So you can see here that they're like lower and then they go high. So this person actually probably is a great example of someone with PCOS. Why can I not get the full one up? Or maybe I've just cut it. So they've likely tried to ovulate a few times here. We can't see their cervical mucus, so we don't know what's going on. But generally, given that they didn't ovulate until day 27, I'm going to say what happened is they tried to ovulate a couple of times. They didn't, for whatever reason is happening in their own personal cycle. And then you can see here that they've definitely ovulated because their temperatures have risen and remained high. So that's what it looks like when you chart on a fertility awareness chart. And that actually links to our progesterone. If you remember, our progesterone is low for the first half of the cycle and then goes high. That's because, yeah, that's why our temps will rise there as well, is because our progesterone has gone high. And that shows us our luteal phase, which is, yeah, is that 14? Yeah, 14 days. So that's a general length luteal phase that we would see. Other page as well that I grabbed up, I just quickly grab, show you some examples. So this is some other fertility awareness charts too. So you can see here, this person had a bleed and then they actually had some spotting at the end, which we'd want to have a look into, as we wouldn't generally, some people do have spotting, but generally there might be some kind of hormonal imbalance going on there. This person definitely tried to ovulate multiple times, because you can see here how they have these bunches of cervical mucus and then it dries up and then it goes again and then it dries up and then it goes again and it dries up and goes again. And you can see they didn't actually ovulate until somewhere around here in the 30s. So their body has tried multiple times and then they've ovulated and the temperature has risen, and you can see that they've then dried up with their cervical mucus for that last part. This is another example as well. So this person ovulated a little bit early. So they had their period and then they pretty much went straight into egg white mucus straight away, which shows that our estrogen has shot up. And then from there, their temps have risen. So they're just some examples of what a fertility awareness chart would look like, and then how we assess what's going on with their hormones. Any questions about those?
There's a question in the chat.
Thank you. What positive impacts have you had with your own experiences since learning about your own cycle hormone imbalances? Oh gosh, where do I start, Leisha? My whole life has changed since learning about my cycle and my hormones. So I used to get really bad period pain, like to the point where I nearly, all right, Elise, thanks for coming. To the point where, like, a couple of times I was like, oh my God, I need to call an ambulance. Like, I can't move. I was in so much pain. So from learning my cycle, I've been able to balance my hormones, I guess. So I know exactly when I'm ovulating. Pretty much now I've been doing it for, oh gosh, 7 years. So like, if I showed you my charts, I like do it every couple of days because I know it so well in my head that I don't need to put it on paper anymore. Because I just know exactly what I'm looking for. I can be like, oh, that's right. Oh, that's not right. What have I done the last few weeks that would have caused that? And what do I need to change or support? My pleasure, Kelly. So that's one of the biggest things is I've been able to get rid of my severe period pain. I also used to have really bad PMS. So from that, I've been able to really work on, for me, I had estrogen dominance and I also had really bad blood sugar imbalances. So for me, it was about supporting my liver and my gut and making sure I'm balancing my blood sugar properly to really give me a really nice luteal phase. So I was able to do that from realizing what was going on with my hormones. You're welcome, Saffron. What else? I think also it's just really important to know exactly where you are in your phases so you can be a bit nicer to yourself. Like, if you're in your luteal phase and you've got all these social events on and you're like, I just don't want to go, like, I'm so over it. And then you're like, actually, you know what, Steph, you don't have to go. Like, you're in your phase where you want to be more internal and just be by yourself, and that's okay. I think sometimes we can take it to the next extreme where we're like, okay, it's my luteal phase and menstrual cycle, so I'm just not doing anything for those 2 weeks. We still obviously need to have a normal life, but it's just about giving yourself grace and realizing that we are cyclical beings and we do have different talents in different phases, and every phase brings something really great. And sometimes it also brings some other things that aren't so good. But when we realize what phase we're in, we can plan our months out and we know how to support our body better, right? Like, I will take a few things out of my planner for the luteal phase so that I don't end up with really bad PMS, because I know if I push myself too hard, I end up doing all of those things like skipping meals and not meditating and not going to the gym and not putting any connection time in there. And then I will get more PMS symptoms because my body's saying, hey, you haven't supported me. What are you doing? So that's the thing with your cycle. Like, you're not just going to magically take a pill or do things right 1 month and then you'll have a good period forever. Like, your cycle is literally your report card of the month. And if you haven't treated yourself well, then you're not going to have a perfect period. It's as simple as that. Like, you have to, yeah, it's literally your body being like, respect yourself or I will tell you you've been bad, you know? So yeah, I would say they're the main things for me, is really, and I actually have used the fertility awareness method for birth control for 7 years, and a lot of people still don't believe it's true, but it is 98.6% effective, which is actually more effective than the pill. But again, it comes down to your own knowledge and your own compliance. But I think it's amazing, and I wish more people were taught about it, because what an amazing option to have if the pill hasn't worked for you. Like, if I was that 20-year-old girl really struggling with the pill, that would have been a great option for me back then. But unfortunately, it was something that was never taught, because people feel like, well, a lot of health professionals don't teach it because people can't be trusted. But I think it comes down to like you making that decision for your own health, you know? So yeah, multiple things. And of course, my most favorite thing out of learning it all is helping other women too. And I've also helped a lot of women get pregnant who were struggling by teaching them how to learn their own cycle, which has been really nice as well. Very exciting to get that call, like, we're pregnant, after they've been trying for ages. But yes, many, many, many positive and exciting experiences that I've had from learning my cycle and my hormones and fixing my imbalances. So if you haven't yet, do it. Alrighty, I have been chatting your ear off. Yes, it is so rewarding. I love it. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. I really, really appreciate having you all here. And I hope you've learned a little bit extra about your body. I hope this has sparked something you need to learn more. And if you do feel like you want extra help, my door is always open, and it's even more open for next Monday because you should all join. It's going to be amazing. I'm really, really excited for this round and really, really cool things coming. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much. That was amazing.
Thanks,
I hope you learned
Steph.
something. You're welcome. Thank you for coming.
Cute.
All right, girls. We'll see you all later. Have a good night.
Yeah, you too.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.